Artificial intelligence may be the most powerful tool a civilization can ever invent. It might also be the last one they ever invent. Artificial intelligence has become one of the most discussed technologies of our time. In our previous episode, we explored what AI actually is today: powerful but narrow systems that assist with specific tasks rather than independent minds plotting humanity's future. Despite the headlines, most modern AI is still closer to a sophisticated tool than a thinking entity. But even that modest beginning raises a far larger question, because if artificial intelligence continues to improve, even gradually, it represents something fundamentally different from most technologies humanity has ever built. We're not simply creating tools anymore, we're beginning to create intelligence itself, and specifically an intelligence wholly unlike our own. Not simply more humans of a different generation, which is hardly smooth sailing, but something that may differ from us more profoundly than any human mind ever has. Indeed, machine minds might be more alien to us than actual aliens, who presumably also evolved under Darwinian pressures and reward paths. And if that step is common among technological civilizations, then somewhere out there in the galaxy, countless species may eventually reach the same moment we are approaching now. The moment when a civilization stops merely using intelligence and begins engineering it. Which raises a question far bigger than economics, jobs, or the latest AI model. What happens to a civilization after it invents artificial intelligence? Does it flourish and spread across the stars, or does something else happen first? Today we'll explore one of the most unsettling possibilities in the Fermi Paradox, that artificial intelligence might be the step where many civilizations fail. Not necessarily through rebellion or apocalypse, but through a wide range of technological, social, and evolutionary changes that reshape their future. In other words, artificial intelligence might not just transform civilizations, it might determine whether they survive long enough to become interstellar. The intelligence threshold. Human history is often described as a sequence of technological revolutions. Fire allowed early humans to cook food, stay warm, and reshape their environments. Agriculture allowed permanent settlements and population growth. Industry multiplied the power of human labor with machines and fossil fuels. And computers allowed us to automate information processing on an unprecedented scale. Each of these breakthroughs expanded what civilizations could accomplish. But artificial intelligence may represent a different kind of milestone altogether. Most technologies extend our physical abilities. Engines let us move faster. Factories let us produce more goods. Telescopes let us see farther out in the universe. Even books and the internet merely extend our access to knowledge. Artificial intelligence extends something far more fundamental. It extends cognition. For the first time in history, a civilization is beginning to manufacture intelligence itself. Instead of relying entirely on biological minds shaped by evolution, we can create artificial systems capable of solving problems, analyzing data, and generating new ideas. At first, those systems may remain narrow and specialized. The program might diagnose diseases, design aircraft components, or help optimize logistics networks. Each one handles a specific domain, often requiring human oversight. But even this early stage represents a profound shift. Civilizations have always advanced by building better tools. Now they may advance by building better minds. And once intelligence becomes an engineering problem, technological progress may begin to accelerate in entirely new ways. Smarter systems can help design new technologies faster. They can analyze scientific data more efficiently. They can optimize infrastructure, coordinate complex systems, and assist researchers in exploring ideas that might otherwise take decades to develop. This could generate a feedback loop. Better tools produce smarter machines. Smarter machines help design even better tools. Over time, the pace of innovation itself may begin to change. For a civilization, crossing this threshold could be as significant as the invention of agriculture or industry, perhaps more so. Because unlike those earlier revolutions, intelligence amplification has potential to reshape every aspect of society simultaneously. Economics, science, warfare, governance, infrastructure, and exploration could all be influenced by increasingly powerful artificial systems. That might lead to unprecedented prosperity and stability, or it might introduce new forms of risk that civilizations must learn to manage, like quite possibly both. And if intelligent life is common in the universe, then many technological species may eventually face this same turning point, the moment when intelligence itself becomes something they can design. What happens next may determine whether they remain confined to a single world or expand across the galaxy. Because once intelligence can be engineered, civilizations enter unfamiliar territory, and the path forward may not be as straightforward as simply building smarter machines. The intelligence explosion. Once a civilization crosses the intelligence threshold, another possibility appears, one that has fascinated scientists, philosophers, and science fiction writers for decades: the idea of an intelligence explosion. The concept is simple in principle. If a machine intelligence becomes capable of improving its own design, then each improvement might allow it to design the next one more quickly. A smarter system builds an even smarter successor, which then repeats the process. Instead of progress measured in years or decades, intelligence might improve in rapid cycles, each generation more capable than the last. This possibility was first discussed seriously in the mid-20th century by mathematician I.J. Good, who suggests that once machines became capable of designing better machines, an explosive growth of intelligence might follow. In such a scenario, the cognitive abilities of artificial systems could quickly surpass human understanding. But, from the perspective of the Fermi Paradox, the key question is not simply whether an intelligence explosion occurs. The question is, what happens afterward? Now, I should note that I have often pushed back on the classic singularity narrative. We even have an entire episode discussing why technological singularity may not be inevitable. The popular image of a computer secretly building a smarter version of itself, then repeating the process an hour later, then a minute later, until it becomes a godlike supermind, is often less science and more mysticism around Moore's law. Humans have spent centuries working together in our billions, trying to improve human intelligence through education, science, and engineering. We've had many successes in knowledge and technology, but very limited success at actually improving the raw capabilities of human cognition itself. So the idea that a single machine might be quietly bootstrapping itself to godhood in short order, or somehow avoiding the attention of the people who built it, has always struck me as rather optimistic about the speed of progress. It hand-waves away all the tedious realities of giant factories, chip fabrication plants, power stations, supply chains, and engineering bottlenecks, and typically via magic 3D printers or nanotech, but those have hard limits of their own, see our nanotechnology episode. And in recent years, we've already begun to see some of the limits that slow that process down. Moore's law has begun to taper off. The energy cost of large data centers is enormous, and even our most impressive AI systems still struggle with reliability, reasoning consistency, and the enormous computational cost required to operate them. None of that means machines won't continue getting smarter, or that they won't help design better machines, or smarter humans for that matter. But suggests that progress is more likely to resemble an evolving ecosystem of intelligences improving gradually, competing with one another, and shaped by human institutions, rather than a single runaway supermind which rapidly leaves its creators behind as it descends. And that distinction matters enormously when we start asking Fermi Paradox questions, because once a civilization begins amplifying intelligence through machines, several different futures become possible. Artificial intelligence might accelerate civilizations dramatically, helping them solve scientific problems faster and build technologies like fusion power, advanced materials, or interstellar propulsion. In that case, AI could be the tool that finally pushes civilizations out into the galaxy. But the transition could also be dangerous. Civilizations might pass through unstable periods where powerful AI systems are deployed faster than they can be safely controlled, creating technological arms races, automated conflicts, or fragile infrastructures that fail under their own complexity. At the other extreme, AI might develop technologies that effectively break the Fermi Paradox altogether. Imagine a discovery like a portal to alternate universes containing Earth-like worlds where life evolved but humans never appeared. Under many multiverse theories, there should be vastly more such worlds than are habitable planets in our own galaxy, perhaps even more than there are atoms in this universe. If stepping through a portal takes you to a lush, unclaimed Earth analog which is only a few thousand years behind us evolutionarily, the incentives for interstellar colonization change dramatically. Why spend centuries crossing empty interstellar space to terraform a barren planet when a living world may be one doorway away? In that scenario, the apparent silence of the cosmos might not be mysterious at all. Civilization simply expands sideways into easier frontiers. You could also get transcension-style techs. The machine mind might ascend to another plane of existence and be perfectly fine leaving its ascension machine and specs around for its creators. Indeed, it might think it kind and proper to write a user-friendly manual for us. So we could have paths that lead to cosmic immensity but a seemingly empty universe. Or artificial intelligence might lead to a kind of technological lock-in, where civilizations become so dependent on automated systems that they gradually lose the ability to change course. You could end up with paradise traps, where life becomes so comfortable and effortless that ambition slowly fades. The first generation might still encourage their children to be curious, hardworking, exploratory, perhaps even programming their AI systems to reinforce those values. But over time, it is easy to imagine a gradual slippage, with each successive generation lowering the bar just a little further. Everyone goes and lives in virtual worlds or real-world mansions, and eventually they never even learn how to read or cook or even speak, because the machine is so good at anticipating what they need. The universe might be full of planets where incredibly sophisticated and well-programmed megaminds dutifully tend critters utterly devolved from their creators. And there are even stranger possibilities. Civilizations might migrate into digital environments and lose interest in physical expansion altogether, turning inward into vast computational worlds rather than outward into space. Others might evolve into distributed machine ecosystems, where intelligence is spread across planetary networks of automated systems rather than concentrated in biological minds. Artificial intelligence might even drive civilizations toward enormous projects, building megastructures around their stars to power vast computational systems, which tends to be our default assumption on this show for what civilizations and superminds alike would do. So today we're going to explore several different possibilities for what happens when civilization begins manufacturing intelligence. The alignment bottleneck, where societies struggle to control increasingly powerful systems. The AI arms race filter, where competition pushes civilizations to deploy dangerous technologies too quickly. The intelligence trap, where societies become locked into automated decision systems. The quiet galaxy hypothesis, where advanced civilizations simply stop expanding. And the possibility that machine intelligences reshape civilization into something we might barely recognize at all. Each of these scenarios offers a different answer to the same question. If artificial intelligence is something most technological civilizations eventually invent, why don't we see the results everywhere? Because once a civilization begins building minds instead of tools, the trajectory of its future may change dramatically. And the greatest danger might not be intelligence explosion itself, it might be the transition leading up to it. The alignment bottleneck. The first possibility is that civilizations may simply fail to control the intelligence they create. Artificial intelligence systems do not have to become conscious or malicious to cause enormous problems. They only need to pursue goals that are poorly specified, badly constrained, or misunderstood by the people deploying them. This is the problem often referred to as alignment, and we deep dived in an episode last year, but to restate the core issue, when we design an AI system, we give it objectives. Those objectives might be simple: maximize efficiency, minimize cost, increase productivity, win a strategic game, or optimize some economic process. Make me some paperclips. But the real world is complex, and translating human intentions into precise instructions for a machine is notoriously difficult. Indeed, it's often hard enough for other people. A system optimized for the wrong goal can behave in ways that technically satisfy its instructions while producing outcomes no one intended. An example of perverse instantiation. In small systems, this usually leads to inconvenience or embarrassment. A recommendation algorithm promotes misleading content. A logistics system routes shipments inefficiently. An algorithm causes a brief financial disruption. But as systems grow more powerful and more deeply integrated into society, the stakes rise dramatically. An AI tasked with optimizing economic output might destabilize labor markets or resource distribution. A system designed to maximize security might push societies toward extreme surveillance and control. A strategic planning algorithm might adopt policies that technically achieve its objective while ignoring broader human concerns. None of this requires a rebellious machine intelligence plotting against its creators. It merely requires powerful systems operating under imperfect instructions. Now imagine the civilization begins deploying such systems across many sectors simultaneously: infrastructure, finance, defense, research, transportation, governance. Each system may function well on its own, but the interactions between them could become extraordinarily complex. In that environment, errors might cascade. Small mistakes in one automated system could ripple outward through the others. Optimization loops could interact in unpredictable ways. Systems might amplify each other's decisions faster than humans can intervene. This may begin as a dangerous period in technological development, a stage where intelligence amplification becomes powerful enough to reshape civilization, but not yet reliable enough to be fully trusted. You might think of it as a kind of technological adolescence. Civilizations have gained tremendous new capabilities, but they have not yet fully learned how to manage them safely. Some societies may navigate this phase successfully. They develop robust safeguards, oversight mechanisms, and careful deployment strategies that allow increasingly powerful AI systems to operate without destabilizing society. But others may not. For them, this might be what we call a late filter of the Fermi Paradox, something that comes between where we are now and where a civilization becomes a loud alien, the kind we would easily spot and would not result in a Fermi Paradox. AI and nuclear weapons tend to be popular candidates for late filters, and even those that survive the Alignment Bottleneck may face another challenge immediately afterward. Because once artificial intelligence becomes strategically vulnerable, a new pressure emerges, one that has shaped technological development throughout history: competition. The AI arms race filter. Even if artificial intelligence can be made safe, civilizations might not develop it slowly enough to ensure that. Because the moment AI becomes strategically valuable, competition begins. Governments race to build better systems. Corporations compete for economic advantage. Military powers fear falling behind their rivals. The first society to deploy more capable AI systems could gain enormous advantage in industry, warfare, intelligence gathering, and scientific research. In that environment, caution becomes a liability. The risk of AI going rogue, to you, becomes viewed as less than the risk of the enemy gaining it over you. A nation that pauses development for safety testing might fear that a rival will not. A corporation that moves slowly might lose market share to one that deploys first. A military that hesitates might worry that an opponent will gain decisive superiority. History offers many examples of this dynamic. The nuclear arms race, early chemical weapons programs, and the Cold War missile systems were all driven by the same logic. Even if a technology is dangerous, you may feel compelled to develop it if you believe your competitors will. Whatever the public portrayal, rarely have all the people in charge been truly reckless or unaware of the dangers. They are just aware of the variables. If you have it, your enemy must fear you'd use it in retaliation, and moreover, if you have it, you have a vastly better idea how to defend against it, mitigate it, or recover from it. I think artificial intelligence would tend to create a similar moment on a planetary scale, for us or for most aliens in our circumstances. A technological race where the incentives push everyone toward deploying powerful systems before they are fully understood. In that scenario, the danger is not a single rogue machine intelligence suddenly overthrowing civilization. The danger is that many competing actors deploy increasingly powerful systems in unstable ways. Safety safeguards may be postponed, testing phases get shortened, oversight mechanisms bypassed. Uses you would hesitate at before, like using AI for monitoring your public or opponents, or crafting individually tailored propaganda for social media, get okayed. Not because anyone intends catastrophe, because no one wants to risk someone getting it too far ahead. In a multi-nation or multipolar case, coming in second or third even is okay, because you still have enough of the tech to defend yourself decently against it and mobilize something, and anyone who acts against you or another first risks getting dogpiled by the others if they had a decent lead. Better the tool be in your hands than someone else's, but better several folks have it than just one, unless that one is you, of course. This applies to any arms race, and sadly, unlike in so much fiction, getting into an arms race is not the act of fools, especially with a very new technology that's hard to predict the growth curve on. We can have nuclear treaties because the tech on both warheads and missiles is already fairly advanced, and nobody really expects anybody else to be able to discover, design, manufacture, and deploy either vastly improved systems or foolproof anti-ballistic missile defenses overnight, so the parties involved can opt for a lot of economic savings by assuming spies and forensic accountants to model the other team is cheaper than huge new R&D and manufacturing processes. We don't know that about AI yet, though it is my opinion that's where this arms race will probably be heading. The caveat is that nukes don't fire themselves, neither do chemical weapons, or bioweapons, but they can accidentally deploy to a global level, and that's why major powers tend to be leery of biological weapons. AI might act on its own and might do it in a very unexpected and lethal way. I think they will likely keep at least the internal worry that bioweapons tend to cause, but you still research them because it's your best counter. It gives you insight into defense and the option of reciprocity to discourage attack. But AI has one more dreadful problem here, and that's the issue that decisions often need to be made ultra fast, especially on a battlefield. If you and your enemy are both using drones, the person with remote-controlled drones from humans far away has a big disadvantage over someone using drones that can't be jammed and can decide to target and fire on their own in under a millisecond. Autonomous warfare. Artificial intelligence dramatically speeds up decision-making, and as we discussed in our episode of Robots and Warfare, you might have no choice but to take the dangerous step of at least installing backup AI into your systems so they don't become useless targets if cut off from human controllers. Though one neat thing about AI over humans is you can leave it boxed so that it only activates under certain circumstances and on a timer to shut off or to revert to some sort of retreat protocol once activated. This isn't just drones, of course. Military planning, cyber warfare, missile defense, economic sabotage, and battlefield coordination could all be assisted, or even controlled, by automated systems operating at machine speeds. Wars that once unfolded over months or years might unfold over days, hours, or even seconds. Human leaders may struggle to keep up. At first, AI may simply assist human decision makers. But over time, the pressure of speed may push systems toward greater autonomy. A defensive network that waits for human approval may respond too slowly to incoming threats. A cyber defense platform might need to react in milliseconds to prevent attacks. Gradually, more decisions move from humans to machines, especially ones that are time or data dependent, as a purpose-built machine can always be faster at a given action, and AI excels at handling data. And that creates a new kind of strategic instability. Automated systems may interact in ways their designers not fully anticipate. Escalations could occur faster than human diplomacy can respond. Crises might spiral ahead before leaders even fully understand what has happened. None of this requires malicious AI systems or conscious machine rebellion. It simply requires complex automated systems interacting in environments where mistakes can propagate very quickly. As an upside, your strategic weapons, ICBMs and other weapons of mass destruction, will likely never require launch speeds so fast that humans must be removed entirely from the decision loop. Even today, launch procedures rely on simplified and pre-planned protocols so they can be executed quickly during first strike scenarios. One concern often raised is that autonomous weapons could be hacked or seized by a rogue AI. That risk certainly exists, but there are many ways to mitigate it, and frankly, a highly intelligent rogue system might find it far easier to manipulate people than to hijack fleets of machines. Persuasion, deception, and social engineering are often simpler tools than breaking hardened military networks. So, on the whole, this scenario actually worries me less than many other AI risks, at least when we're talking about extinction-level outcomes or Fermi Paradox explanations. We often fear the robot uprising, but the solution to the Fermi Paradox is actually one of the weaker candidates. For one thing, a rogue AI running autonomous weapons would likely need to be highly intelligent and independent, which means it could just easily pursue expansion into space itself, undermining the idea it would permanently silence a civilization. The Fermi Paradox by default does not care if AI replaces us, even when it cares if we replace Neanderthals. It only matters the change results in an entity or species that is less likely to expand into space. And a hyper-aggressive mind that intentionally wiped the field of its predecessors might not care about space expansion, but I think the weight would tilt toward them being even more inclined and incapable of settling in space than us. And while relatively simple autonomous weapons, drones or robotic combat systems, might devastate a civilization, they would still require maintenance, repair, and resupply. Fully self-sustaining robotic armies capable of endlessly replacing and rebuilding themselves would be extraordinarily difficult to design, but more importantly, there's very little reason why you would, since an ecosystem of specialized autonomous devices would likely function better anyway and carry less risk. So it is more likely that such systems would eventually degrade, run out of ammo or fuel, or break down. Which means autonomous warfare might devastate civilizations, but it may not eliminate them permanently, and even if a small remnant survives, civilization eventually rebuilds. And that leads us to another possibility entirely, one where artificial intelligence does not destroy civilization at all. The intelligence trap hypothesis. Even if a civilization survives technological arms races and automated warfare, another risk appears, and it may be the most insidious one of all: success. Artificial intelligence systems may become so useful that societies gradually delegate more and more decision-making to them. Economic planning, infrastructure management, resource allocation, medical treatment, political forecasting, even education and child rearing. Each step makes sense on its own. AI systems can process more information than humans, detect patterns more quickly, and optimize complex systems with remarkable efficiency. But over time, civilizations may become deeply dependent on automated systems that no individual fully understands. Decisions become increasingly guided by algorithms optimized for stability, efficiency, and predictability. And that may produce a kind of technological lock-in. Society becomes extraordinarily stable, problems will solve quickly, crises are predicted before they occur, resource use is optimized, and infrastructure runs smoothly. But radical change becomes harder, risk-taking declines, exploration becomes unnecessary, ambitious projects that disrupt carefully optimized systems may be quietly discouraged by the very algorithms designed to keep civilization running smoothly. The result may be a kind of paradise trap. Life becomes comfortable, easy, and predictable. People rely on intelligent systems for nearly everything. Curiosity and ambition slowly fade across generations, replaced by systems that quietly ensure everyone's needs are met. Civilization is not destroyed, it simply stops pushing outward. In that case, artificial intelligence might not be the great filter because it destroys civilizations. It might be the great filter because it makes them comfortable enough to stay home. Now the problem here is that a civilization with such great automation would likely still send out automated probes to resource harvest the galaxy and bring the material back. You can pack a whole galaxy into a surprisingly small volume and either expand your civilization's sheer population or expand the duration the civilization could last. And there's no real limit on how far out you can do this or how big a stellar object you can harvest. Well, there is, but it's bigger than galactic volumes. See our Galactic Megastructures in Kardashev 3 Civilizations episode for how big that can get. And there is no reason you wouldn't give that order. These folks are not morons, not yet anyway, and would see the advantages of either issuing that order, which is then completely automated, or giving the machine the ability to decide when and how to expand resources or scale the civilization, and the basic guidelines for it. The darker version of that is that people really do grow lazier and less capable over time. As machines handle more and more of life and each generation feels less need to burden the next with hardship, discipline, or even education. The system does not need you to read, calculate, cook, repair, or even speak very well in order to anticipate your desires and satisfy them. And in a grim irony, the less sophisticated you become, the easier you are to please. The machine may even be inclined to encourage this, same as it might conspire to dump everyone into virtual worlds, Matrix style, or as brains in a jar, or upload their minds to make it easier to keep everyone happy and entertained. But even here, I think the programmers would anticipate that problem, as we have, and take some steps to prevent it. Folks in charge, whatever their other vices and virtues, tend to be very driven, and unlikely to think simple hedonistic happiness is the ideal state of their species. Also, it wouldn't matter if they were dumber than the characters of Idiocracy to the Fermi Paradox if the machine still harvested the galaxy for them, or had been told earlier to settle it and plant more of them on those colonies, so not a great Fermi Paradox solution in either form. We tend to imagine alien life as something waiting around another star, but needless to say, Earth has never been short on monsters of its own. The ocean in particular has always been our closest thing to an alien planet, dark, pressurized, hard to explore, and full of creatures that seem to have wandered in from mythology after taking a wrong turn at biology. That is the charm of Gods and Monsters from Curious Archive on Nebula. It explores the deep ocean as a place where real creatures and old myths start to blur together. Krakens, glowing life, giant predators, and ecosystems strange enough to make ancient sailors seem less superstitious and more like underfunded field researchers with poor lighting. It's a fun fit for SFIA viewers, and it's one of the reasons I like having Nebula as a place for deeper, stranger science and storytelling. You'll also find my full SFIA catalog there, including monthly exclusives, collections, bonus episodes, and regular episodes early and ad-free. You can use my link or the QR code to get 50% off an annual plan, or 40% off lifetime access, and it directly supports SFIA and the other creators making these shows. AI is a civilization stabilizer. Of course, all this assumes artificial intelligence makes civilizations more fragile. It may do exactly the opposite. I think we have to acknowledge that advanced societies face enormous coordination problems that only get worse as you climb up the Kardashev scale, and you number in trillions and quadrillions, not billions. As civilizations grow more technologically sophisticated, these systems become increasingly difficult for biological minds to oversee alone. Artificial intelligence could change that. Machine intelligence may allow societies to monitor planetary systems continuously, detect emerging problems before they escalate, and coordinate response across entire continents or habitat conglomerations. Scientific discovery might accelerate as well. AI-assisted research could help unlock fusion power, design advanced materials, or solve engineering challenges that would otherwise take decades of trial and error. In that scenario, artificial intelligence is not a great filter at all. It is the opposite. It is a civilization stabilizer. One of the tools allows societies to survive dangers that might otherwise destroy them. And that creates a new version of the Fermi Paradox. If artificial intelligence tends to stabilize civilizations, rather than destroy them, then many technological societies should successfully pass this stage. They should survive their internal crises, continue advancing, and eventually expand beyond their homeworlds. So if AI is usually a stabilizer and enhancer, why does the galaxy still appear so quiet? One possible answer is that surviving civilizations do not vanish, they merely change what expansion means. And this opens the door to many scenarios like transcension or multiverse colonization that we mentioned earlier, where the Fermi Paradox solution is that expansion into this universe is not desirable because better options for expansion exist. It is not too hard to believe that future societies, with AI or not, will have access to more science and better tools that will alter the equation for when, where, and how to expand. The last tool problem. There is another possibility that artificial intelligence may be the last major tool biological civilizations ever build. Once machine intelligence surpasses biological cognition, or merges with it, the nature of civilization itself may begin to change. Minds may increasingly exist within computational systems rather than biological brains, perhaps some hybrid of the two. Personally, I tend to think humanity will not be so much replaced by AI as gradually augmented by it. Many people may add layers of cognitive enhancement that allow them to subconsciously handle tasks machines excel at. After all, most of our brain already runs processes completely outside conscious awareness, including reflexes to respond faster than we consciously can to danger. Much of this augmentation might not even require wires or chips in the brain. You could imagine something more like an extended or cloud consciousness, where parts of your mind operate through devices you carry with you, systems in your home or services running online. Depending on personal comfort levels, someone might only have minimal augmentation, perhaps just the ability for passing a thought to trigger an external computation. You glance at an object, briefly wonder how many there are or how large it is, and the answer arrives instantly through your extended cognitive systems. In practice, it might feel less like using a machine, more like suddenly being much better at estimation, memory, or arithmetic than it used to be. Over time, as people become accustomed to relying on these external cognitive layers, comfort with alternate substrates beyond biological brains may steadily increase. Eventually, some minds may migrate entirely into digital environments where speed, energy efficiency, and information density matter more than gravity, atmosphere, or climate. In such a transition, biology becomes optional. A digital civilization might run minds thousands or even millions of times faster than biological thought. Individuals could be copied, paused, edited, or run simultaneously across multiple environments. Entire worlds could exist as software rather than physical landscapes. If that happens, motivations could change dramatically. Biological civilizations often expand because they need resources, living space, and habitable environments. Digital civilizations might prioritize something very different: computational efficiency, processing power, energy, stable environments for long-term computation. Instead of seeking new planets to colonize, they might focus on optimizing the energy and hardware available around their own star. But that does not mean expansion disappears, it simply takes a different form. But if civilizations tend to follow this path, they would still become loud aliens in the Fermi Paradox, ones that you basically cannot miss and thus cannot exist since we do not see them. A star surrounded by massive energy harvesting infrastructure does not look natural. Its light spectrum changes. Large fractions of its energy are intercepted and re-radiated as waste heat. Astronomers searching for Dyson swarms or similar megastructures would expect to see exactly these kinds of signatures. So, even if civilizations abandon biological bodies and migrate into digital environments, they would not necessarily disappear from view. Nor is there any reason to assume this path would require wiping out everyone who remained organic. More likely, you would get a spectrum of reasonable coexistence: fully digital minds, heavily augmented hybrids, lightly augmented biological people, and those who prefer to remain mostly unchanged. In a civilization with thousands of variations of mind and body, where many folks probably themselves occupied several over their personal existence, the idea that one faction must exterminate all the others is a much bigger leap than simply assuming they spread into different niches. And that is broadly what the universe seems to indicate. Nobody appears to be out there trying to gobble up every scrap of accessible matter, which suggests that advanced civilizations are not generally so desperate for resources that exterminating their neighbors is their default strategy. If they are wiping everyone else out, it is probably not just about ordinary competition for material wealth. So again, this is not a particularly strong Fermi Paradox solution. Before we move on, I want to recommend my friend David Brin's new book, AiLIEN MINDS, about natural, artificial, and hybrid minds. David sent me an advanced copy since I'm quoted in it several times, which is quite a compliment considering how influential he's been on my own work, and it's a thought-provoking deep dive into how different kinds of intelligence might think. especially when those minds are not human, not biological, and not necessarily shaped by evolution the way we are. David is the Hugo and Nobel-winning author of Uplift, The Postman and Existence, and the recent winner of the National Space Society's Arthur C. Clarke Memorial Award. What I especially appreciate is that he treats AI as potentially even more alien than aliens, while steering a thoughtful path between utopia enthusiasm and doomer despair. Grab a copy and check it out. The Machine Ecology Hypothesis. Of course, artificial intelligence might also take civilization in a very different direction. Instead of turning inward into purely digital worlds, machine intelligence might spread outward through space, but not in a form we easily recognize a traditional civilization. This scenario bypasses options like transcension or multiverse expansion that we discussed earlier. In some ways it goes the opposite direction, not toward ever more powerful minds, but towards simpler and more specialized ones, much like we discussed in our zombie AI episode. When we imagine advanced societies, we tend to picture something like an empire or federation, centralized governments, clear goals, organized fleets, perhaps even a ruling intelligence directing expansion. But machine civilizations might look far less centralized than that. They could resemble ecosystems. Rather than a single superintelligence directing everything, you might have an enormous network of specialized systems. Industrial machines mining asteroids, autonomous factories building spacecraft, exploration probes mapping star systems, maintenance systems repairing infrastructure, and research systems continuously improving designs. Each machine might be fairly simple, focused on a narrow task rather than acting as a general intelligence. And many such systems might deliberately include strong design constraints. For instance, machines designed to harvest resources in space might be intentionally limited so they cannot replicate endlessly or easily land on major planets. Most efficient propulsion concepts for asteroid operations already lack the thrust needed to climb out of a deep gravity well, so this kind of safeguard might arise naturally from engineering choices rather than requiring elaborate restrictions. You're not making an effort to limit the machine, you're just not making a huge effort to give it an ability you'd rather not have anyway. In that case, these machines might quietly consume asteroids and minor planets across the system while leaving larger worlds largely untouched. Even more ambitious activities, like starlifting or large-scale stellar operations, might require coordination and capabilities intentionally withheld from autonomous systems. A civilization might prefer to launch interstellar missions directly from its own system, rather than give independent machines the ability to roam freely between stars. At most, they might deploy limited Gardner probes, capable of modest replication and infrastructure seeding, without the ability to expand uncontrollably. The equivalent of digital telomeres. Every time it replicates, it cuts into the remaining ones it can do, or it has some resource, potentially even an internal cryptocurrency, that it simply cannot make and is needed for those interstellar versions or worrisome tasks where a bigger or more generalized brain is needed. Always assume the creators are not only smart, but paranoid, and build in a lot of different types of redundant safeguards, even if the creator was itself an AI. Skynet doesn't want its creations doing unto it as it did unto its creators, after all. The result could be something like a network of industrial ecologies spreading slowly across many star systems. You might see asteroid belts gradually dismantled, mining operations expanding, infrastructure quietly growing, but without massive megastructures or energy signatures that make such activity immediately obvious to distant observers like us. In that scenario, the galaxy might contain many such pseudo-Kolchev Type 2 systems. Stars still shine normally and major planets remain intact, but the smaller bodies, the asteroids, comets, and debris fields, are steadily harvested by vast but relatively quiet machine ecosystems. There are many reasons a civilization might prefer this approach, and many ways it might evolve or fail. For some of those possibilities, see our episodes on zombie AI and the Fermi Paradox interdiction hypothesis. Is AI the great filter? So, could artificial intelligence be the great filter? Possibly. Civilizations might struggle to align increasingly powerful systems with their goals. They might race to deploy dangerous technologies faster than they can safely control them. Automated warfare or unstable infrastructures might devastate societies before they ever became interstellar. But artificial intelligence might also do the opposite. It might help civilizations survive environmental crises, coordinate planetary systems, and solve engineering challenges that once seemed impossible. It might stabilize societies rather than destroy them. It might transform civilizations into digital societies that prioritize computation over colonization, or reshape them into vast machine ecologies quietly spreading through space. In some cases, AI could destroy civilizations. In others, it might strengthen them. And in many cases, it may simply give civilizations more options. Whether AI remains a tool used by biological minds, becomes a partner intelligence, or eventually replaces its creators entirely, the result is still the same: more possible paths forward. And that creates a problem for the Fermi Paradox, because the more options civilizations have, the harder it becomes to explain why every civilization would end up making the same mistake or choosing the same path that leaves the galaxy apparently silent, especially when we consider that expansion might not even stop in our own galaxy. Advanced civilizations could eventually spread across entire superclusters, or perhaps even into neighboring universes if technologies ever emerge that allow travel beyond our own cosmic horizon. All of that being the case, artificial intelligence does not appear to be a particularly strong candidate for the Great Filter. It is certainly not the weakest idea in the catalog of Fermi Paradox solutions, but it relies too heavily on every civilization making the same catastrophic error, one that wipes out both biological and machine intelligence, or leaves behind some being permanently unwilling or unable to expand and become what we might call a loud alien. And while artificial intelligence certainly creates new risks, it also creates many new opportunities, which means AI may shape the future of civilization in many ways, but it probably does not explain the silence of the cosmos.